Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about fast features and messy code. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do you decide between delivering features fast and messy code that strays from design patterns? Well, so first things first, design patterns, my friend, is not the goal. That's a whole, I have so many videos about this. Junior developers should, as a rule, never try to play around with design patterns unless they're under supervision from a very mature and wise senior software developer who can explain to them why playing around with design patterns is sort of watching, for watching a junior try to apply a design pattern. In many cases, that's sort of like watching a monkey trying to understand a violin. Sure, there's going to be some sounds, but it's not going to be music. And so that's a whole different thing, because guys, you have to understand that the design pattern, straying from a design pattern, means that it was not the right design pattern. Because you have to understand that the goal is not the design pattern. The goal is to ship working, sustainable software on time. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else matters. I don't care who says it. I don't care if Linus Torvalds himself comes in here and says that I'm wrong, because that is the end goal of software. Or at the very least the end goal of software development as part of the commercial world, so forth, so forth. And so deciding between delivering a feature fast and messy code really comes down to that internal decision, the balance, light versus dark, or speed versus quality. These are the two opposing forces. And so the way that I like to treat this problem is that I like to look at it from the perspective of what is the impact of what I'm doing. I like to have that mindset whenever I do something, when I have to make a decision between fast delivery speeds and messy code, and like quality code versus slow deliveries. Impact, impact, impact. So, and it's, the cost value ratio again, right? How much am I putting in and how much am I going to get back from that thing? And if we flip that and say, how much damage am I making and how much is that going to cost me? So an example would be, if I get a very sharp deadline, I had this from work actually the other day, or not the other day, it was a while back now, but I had this coworker who we unfortunately had to let go because he simply could not adjust to this situation. And basically we were put in a team together where the way that the software was being delivered was literally two stakeholders came in, just threw a few Slack messages in our channel, said we need this to be built, it would be really nice. No specification, no nothing. And then, you just kind of go to the races. And if you didn't figure that out by yourself, basically, before there was time for their big presentation, they would call you into a meeting and ask, like, why isn't it done? Like, well, how can we make this better? And because for them, this was like it was a complete mystery how that was not good enough for them to get what they wanted. And so we had basically been handed a feature requirement where we literally had a day to solve the problem. And my coworker froze up. And he basically said, well, this is not how you do software development. And I go, no, well, it's not really a good situation, I will admit that, but we have to ship it. Yeah, but like we need to add tests, and we need to do this, and we need to do that, and so there's all this other stuff we need to do. And I go, yeah, you don't have time. Fix it. And he just looked at me like I was an alien or something and said, like, well, I can't work under these conditions. And I said, then pass the keyboard to me, because we have 24 hours to get this done. And I know for a fact that it can be done, or at the very least I know that we can give it the old college try and go down in flames together, or we can get stuff done. but we're not going to move anywhere if you're not willing to make an effort to actually try to fix this thing. And so he really had an issue with this, because he was of this quality mindset that he could not let that go. And I recognize myself in it, because this is exactly the biggest wake-up call I got was when I went from college, like the university, where we did like all test-driven development and like quality-based development in Java, and then I took on my first front-end project, and I realized that holy shit, the way the world works is so different from school. And so I told him, dude, I know that in a perfect world we could do this differently, and in a week or something, like once we have shipped this thing that is so important for our customers on this exact deadline, we will have time later to go back and fix this problem. We will have time to plan, we will have time to start a more qualitative process, but right now the fucking house is on fire. Now is not the time to discuss the coulda, woulda, shouldas. Now is the time to reach for a fire extinguisher and get shit done, because you do not have the luxury of taking your time right now. So in that instance, we kind of just hacked it together, and the day after the demo, everything kind of, they demoed it, so forth, and of course we realized that, this wasn't as important as they made it out to be, which, go figures. But the day after, we started a process of creating more sustainable solutions, because we have the time to actually do so. And that is the biggest tip that I can give to software developers, because I see this all the time. The only time a software developer seems, on average, to consider quality for real is when they have an emotional response to that something is ugly. That's all. I've heard this 100 times before. We're going to commit to quality, so we are going to move slower to move faster. And I go, no, you're not. What's going to happen is that your coworkers or your stakeholders are going to come in through that door while you have this mental idea that you're going to do things in a certain way. And they're going to go, we need this by tomorrow. And then you're going to try to say no, and then you're going to realize that, hey, they pay you fucking salary, and then you're going to hack it together like you always do. That's what's going to happen. And that always happens, because the idea, and this is the thing that stupid people do, the idea that you have in your head is that the world is something that it's not. You have convinced yourself that there are these rules and guidelines and stuff like that you can always follow, and you don't realize that there are prerequisites for that to be true. As my coworker, for example, unit test requires time. If you don't have time, you cannot do unit testing. It's that simple. Just as with anything, you cannot live in a certain place if everything is on fire. Well, unless you're like a fire demon or something like that, maybe. But I hope that you get my drift. And so deciding between messy code and, fast deadline, it really comes down to how fast do you have to ship something and what is feasible for you to do within that time frame. Because if you have 2 seconds to do something, then you don't have time to do anything more than the absolute quickest thing that you can make. The good part is that the better you get at software development, the more quality you will get, even though you're forced to move really, really, really quickly. And in situations where you have more time, this is the thing that never really happens. You have to remember how you felt when you had to do that hack thing, and actually commit to sustainable, good decisions over time, which is not usually something that software developers do. And incidentally, that is also how you maintain a software project over time. You cannot go into planning mode and talk about all these things that are, so critical for the software when you don't have the time. But you will not always be in constant delivery mode, because if you are, it's just a matter of time before the whole thing collapses. But when you have the time, you have to set away a budget to fix things, to make commitments to doing what I call graceful hacking, or writing shitty code well is another term that I like to use. Writing shitty code well is the biggest and most beneficial thing that you can do when you're forced into this situation where you have to decide between speed and delivery. So, because when you're forced to pick between speed and delivery times and quality, what you really have to think about is, as I said, it's really not a decision. It is how much time do you have and how well can you do something in that time frame. Because some people, which I see all the time, what they do is that they have so much time that it doesn't matter. They don't feel stressed. They don't feel really that it's like all that big. They're going to meet their deadline. And then they do the bare minimum. They still hack things together. It's just that they're not consciously doing it. They mess the code up or do make bad software happen when they don't have to. And they do so because A, they're lazy, B, they don't really think about this as a problem, because as I said, the reason most developers have an issue with their code is because they found something that was ugly, but they don't actually consider good sustainable things. It's like, you know, everybody has a fat scare every once in a while, and then they commit very short term when they get that fat scare to go to the gym, and then they start going back eating chips the week after, because now the emotional response is over, and so they go back to their old habits again. And that is the real reason why most people have to make a decision between fast delivery times and good software. So what I want you to take away from this is that the way that I usually pick between fast deliveries and good quality code is that I do an impact analysis. I know that I have a certain time frame to do something all the time, and if I can, like, I will always try to use the maximum amount of that time as long as it's necessary to make the decisions and the adjustments that I need, the Boy Scouting rule, like all of these sorts of practices that you heard about, in that time frame, because it does not matter if I'm done in half the time or if I'm using the entire time, because I have that time allocated. I cannot do that in a sustainable way if my deadline is very, very short, because then I can't fix the big problems. But I can make a mental note, or even better, a physical note, to go back and fix it when I have a larger time span to work with. That is something that I can do, and that is the way that I've found to never really be forced into a situation where I have to pick between quality and delivery speed, because I can achieve both on average. I've found, if I actually understand that there is a time to move really, really quickly and try to really hack something together and try to isolate it, so it's not so the impact of doing that is fairly low, and there is a time to really take your time and do it well. It's just that you have to get out of this, like, almost, it's such a destructive behavior where you only want to fix things when you don't have time to fix them. It's when you have time that people actually need to really go and look, what are things that we can improve now that we have the time budget to do so. Have a great day.